Hello and welcome to JagaVision. We're on episode 39. You can check out archived episodes in our YouTube channel. Hopefully you're watching live right now. If you're not, just know we do these shows every Thursday at 1 p.m. This is our 39th week in a row, so pretty excited. We're streaming live to Twitch, to Facebook, to YouTube, and you can check out archived shows on YouTube. So every episode I like to bring on a guest. Almost every week we've been blessed to have Sister Speak join us, the lead singer of Sister Speak. This week we're going to have Erick Smythe joining us. Erick Smythe is the owner of Cloudwalker Teas. Cloudwalker I became acquainted with quite a number of years ago at the Victoria Tea Festival. Erick has been in the industry for a long time, specializes in aged teas. So last time he was actually on the show, he's been on JagaVision before, in I think like episode 10 or 11, around that range. You have to go back in time and take a look. But today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be drinking his tea. So we had a chance to drink some Milan Shang together. He got to taste some of the work of Mr. Chen. If you go onto our webpage, you look in the oolong section, the Milan Shang is a 2020 Phoenix Mountain oolong that we're pretty stoked about. And Erick, what he's done is he's given me some pu'er leaves to try with him. So he's going to talk about that when he comes onto the show at 1:20. So that's just in a little bit here. In the meantime, what I like to do for these shows is I like to try a tea that I've never had before. I thought it would be an interesting opportunity here, really, to where did I put that? To try out a selection from Yunnan, a pu'er that's I know is pretty cheap. It's probably not going to taste that good, but you never know. It's from 2017, so it's not that old. In the world of pu'ers, you want to. The word is you really want to start drinking them when they're about. What's a good amount of time? 10 years old. So I'm going to put in a good 8 grams of tea. This is a ripe pu'er. And I'm going to do a rinse. Rinse being when you just drop some boiling water over the leaves, submerge them for a moment, and then, oh, wow, you can't see anything of what I'm doing here. Sorry, I'm going to put that in view. And I just pour it down the little drain I have going on here. And I'm gonna fill, making room for about 10 grams of moisture absorption to 170, I think. So 8 grams, 180 grams of water if you hadn't tared the scale. This first infusion is more for aromatics. It's kind of a lightweight introduction to the tea. Really, we're going to get to know the tea when we're on our second or third or even our fourth infusion, especially when it's a higher quality extraction. You can see the color is pretty solid. If the first extraction of a pu'er is really solid, to me that's actually a sign that it might not be the best quality, because it's basically giving up everything it has to say in the first go. Let's give that a go. So these are pretty broken up leaves. It's good. Erick's gonna be our pu'er expert. Jagasilk's been focused on matcha for 15 years, but I'm so fascinated by the different teas out there. So yummy. Okay. What is this? Okay. Yeah, I'm enjoying that. I'll be honest, I'm a little bit surprised. I think when I make Erick's tea, I'm going to use a smaller teapot. I'm going to use one of these guys instead, I think. I think it's just going to get me a better opportunity to just taste more. I should probably use... these guys, does that actually fit like that? That's going to fit inside. Okay. Interesting. Anyway. Okay. So, he's going to come on now. So let's just get him on the air here. Is Erick there? Give me a moment. See if we can't get him to join us. Ooh, I just realized I've spelled his name wrong in all my literature. I better update that and change that. Put a Y in his name. Let's see if we can't get him on the show sooner rather than later. And okay. One sec. These moments. Hello.
Hello.
Is that Erick?
It is.
Okay. Hello, Erick. Welcome to another episode of JagaVision.
Hi. Good to be here.
Is there any way you can make your camera go sideways so that we can get a landscape of you on your phone there, rather than a perfect? Yeah, that fills up the screen. Wonderful.
You see everything?
Your head is mostly in view. We get you're cut off from the eyes up. But if you... There we go. Okay, yeah, actually, that's kind of nice. That's cool. Okay, cool. All right, thank you, Erick, for coming on the show again. Welcome back to JagaVision. For those of our audience that don't know who you are, can you just explain a little bit about what Cloudwalker Tea is and who Erick is?
But
big question.
I've been doing pour tea primarily in Vancouver for the last 10 years or so in different projects. Starting with Cloudwalker was a project that began in Taiwan probably about maybe 14 years ago, and around the time we were doing a translation of a tea book for a well-known Chinese Taiwanese tea master named Master He, great collector of antique teas, and it was from him that I personally learned antique pour and up to present. And during that time, we decided we thought it would be great to share, and upon his sort of suggestion, share this type of tea and this process with sort of the Western world. It's something that wasn't really on the radar for a lot of people at that time, sort of 2008, and moved back here in 2011 and sort of started the first sort of wholesale company for the Western world, representing a collection out of Hong Kong. So Cloudwalker got backburnered for a while, and then we had a shop downtown Vancouver for a number of years. And but this has always been sort of a passion project, and so I'm partly in light of sort of the COVID reset, partly in light of a number of other factors. It seemed like the right time to sort of rebirth Cloudwalker.
Nice. Yeah, and I think I met you as Cloudwalker, like when you came
2013.
2013. So that was at the tea festival here in Victoria, the one before the revival, right? The original tea festival. And there was you or actually, to put it more accurately, I think I heard about you. We were both on the same floor. But I don't know if we actually had a chance to interact. I just kept on hearing people say, "Hey, you got to go talk to this Cloudwalker guy. Like, he's doing this project that you'd really dig." And I just remember that it was just such a well, there was like 3,000 people in 2 days at that event. It was pretty. You must have felt pretty slammed yourself. It was insane, right? Like it was just a. But anyway,
yeah, it was my first tea festival.
And it was good, right? But it was. I think it was really interesting to connect when you came back again for the revival, which I'm a lot more involved in the orchestration of through the nonprofit that I'm co-directing, the International Tea Appreciation Society. And thank you, by the way, on that note, for coming on to the Tea Festival Revival online tea festival this year. That was a lot of fun to have you as a guest on that and to talk about the book. And your presentation on the book and a little bit of an interaction with one of your favorite tea producers.
Yes,
or
we'll also be representing him. Tony Chen.
So that's also, I encourage our viewers to go to the Tea Victoria's YouTube channel and check out that video, which will be split up fairly soon here. So that we can specifically see. You don't have to watch the entire 24 hours to see Eric. You can go and check out Cloudwalker.
Well, you had to do the entire 24 hours, so
that was it was.
I should at least watch it at least in installments or something.
It was pretty intense. Yeah, we had a good time, but yeah, we figured it out. And it was. I actually got really re-inspired. I think I was telling you when we were before. Talking about doing the show again today, when we were talking about it, I was explaining how I was kind of like, I fell into like almost like a lucid dream state when I was watching these ancient dynasty tea sort of ceremony from Yunnan, this musical performance combined with tea preparation, and the person kind of having a challenging time with spilling some things, but it was quite an interesting opportunity to see that. But what I didn't maybe share with you is just how re-inspiring it was for me, how reifying it was to do that festival, to talk to all the different farmers, to talk to all the different tea industry folks, and to just have 24 very, there was just a fascinating, one of the shows was by a scholar in New York. He's not a tea professional in terms of like selling tea. He's a teacher. He does seminars at universities, etc. And he did a whole like PowerPoint presentation of tea and talking about like different old names for it. And he was actually talking about whipped tea at one point. And he had Qing Dynasty. I think was it Song Dynasty? I'm always confused. I'm terrible with this.
There's a big difference.
I know, right? I know. But I'm.
1,000 years.
I'm terrible. Yeah, my wife would be upset. She's the history buff, and I need to get my years in a row. I actually forget. I forget how old I am. I actually don't know what year it is right now, Eric, to tell you the truth.
I'm trying to. Yeah, I started to gloss over a few years.
Yes.
In the 2000s.
But it was a really fascinating presentation that he did. One of for some reason a memorable thing was there used to be a game that those making tea would have where they would have a whisk off, and they would be whisking matcha, and they would, or like powdered tea at the time, and they would see who could make the most like a foam that would stay the longest. And
I remember you were talking about at one point doing a kung fu tea brewing championship or something for Canada, talking about the Camellia sinensis guys in Montreal.
Yeah.
About doing something like that. And there's totally a classical basis for this. In Chinese, it's called dou cha, which is like battling with tea. So like monks and people, if you didn't want to get swords out and have a duel, you would do tea battles.
Right.
So one way to do it is to have like my tea versus your tea, or use the same tea, the same equipment. Right. And that's when you have the Song Dynasty sort of black bowls. That was considered like a blank canvas on which to operate. And then whoever had the most kung fu produced could make the better tea. They won the battle.
It's hilarious.
Maybe North America isn't quite ready for that yet. I think some people definitely are.
You never know.
I think 10 years what can happen.
It's a little bit too much fun, perhaps, but
why not?
I think it's great. Welcome to the show. Sherri Anne's just joined us. Sister Speak.
Hello.
Great performance. I was had a chance to play your music here at the Tea Bar for a little bit there, Sherri Anne. And our viewers, you can check out Sister Speaks performances every Thursday at 12. I sometimes am on there for a brief moment, just chatting music and tea. And we have Sherri Anne, we have Erick. We were just talking. Erick
yeah, what's up?
Sherri Anne.
And how you doing, Erick?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm pretty good today. Yeah, I'm just trying to get this to stay straight.
Oh yeah, I had an adventure trying to. I've got my phone balanced on one of those antique irons.
Nice.
With sort of a.
Oh really?
Well,
that's
next
level.
Yeah. There are tripods around, but I don't have the phone mount, so I had to improvise.
You could have just used like a mic stand.
No, this is yeah. If I had a mic stand, you're the musician.
just
gonna do the whole
bust
show
out
like
your,
this.
your friendly neighborhood nightstand. How would that even work? Okay. Anyway, so I actually
tape it.
I did a reconnaissance mission after you got me that tea there earlier today, Erick. Thank goodness you're in Victoria.
Thank you.
And I drove it over to Sister Speak while she was mid-show, and she now has the tea thanks to her accomplice, and we're ready to rock and roll. You want to tell us maybe a little bit about what we're drinking today? This is going to be part of the Cloudwalker collection, hey?
Yeah. So this is the brick. This is essentially the prototype that you can call it a prototype that we're drinking. It's the producer is a 100-year tea brand out of China. It's Zhouyu Houtang, which is a very prestigious producer. The brand was the factory was started in the 1930s, sort of on a 1,000-year-old, which would have been Song Dynasty roughly, tea plantation, and then there was a bit of a break there in the intervening years, and then revived in the 1980s by the father of the man who currently runs the factory, and he was very much instrumental in introducing a lot of the organic standards and sort of pure farming practices, which are very valuable to tea drinkers, just purely from a tea appreciation standpoint, but also for the health of the environment and a lot of these things. And so the father was very much influential in this circle of cronies, shall we say, in the tea world in Yunnan, and was able to really broaden the awareness about the importance of taking care of the environment, not using pesticides, not using fertilizers, because at the end of the day, pesticides are completely unnecessary for poor anyway.
Yeah,
The trees have natural defense against bugs and things like that, but they were being used a great deal, particularly in the late 90s, and around sort of 2004 to 2010, extremely heavily, and still it's an issue with certain types of tea. But
they were
very,
talking
very
about
proud to be able to work with them. And then so this will become the Cloudwalker. Joe, I'm calling it the House of Joe, because I find that having a name which is easier to remember in English. I could write Zhou Yu Hou Tang, but for a lot of people, I think something that is pronounceable is preferable.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth. I've gone back and forth.
Be respectful also.
I've gone with like different nomenclature for our teas. You know what I've actually settled on personally is I like to kind of find the name of the cultivar, and in this case, I guess you'd be working with a lot of heirlooms or like seed growing cultivars, so it might not have a cultivar name, but it's an interesting way to talk about the tea is to try and find some sort of homogenous way of talking about it. Hey, like this is this cultivar by this farmer, or this is this cultivar by this garden manager, because I think the garden manager or whoever's like involved in the quality control process plays an important role. Of course, the person producing it plays an important role, but are you dealing with a lot of like wild teas? Are these like carefully cultivated? How does the gathering practice work for a cake like this?
Well, like I say, the gardens that make up a significant portion of their production have been have been cultivated beginning about 1,000 years ago. And then a great deal of the planting of a lot of pu'er teas happened sort of in the late Ming, early Qing dynasty, which is sort of 600 to 400 years ago. That's when a lot of planting was done. But there are sort of, it's best if trees are sort of left alone. To call it wild would probably be going a bit far, but there's sort of that semi-wild. You don't want to. It's much different than what we would call plantation teas, where things are very sort of tightly ordered in rows. And
what I'm used to when I buy from Japan is definitely that more ordered style and growing clonal cultivars and more like, say, like the apple industry does for growing apples, where they have a very specific flavor profile, or the wine industry that they want to go for, and so they reproduce that particular variety. Now, when you say that they were planted 400, 600 years ago, were they planted from seed? Or obviously they would have to be, right? So doesn't that make for like massively different flavor profiles from tree to tree?
Well, they were able to do cuttings and things like that hundreds of years ago as well. But
those wouldn't survive to today.
The trees that go into making these specific bricks may not be that old. I would say they're certainly arboreal and above, which is more than 100 years old trees.
Fair. Okay.
There are two different standards. In Taiwan, traditionally, we would say to be considered old growth must be 300 years and above, whereas in mainland China, they would say more than 100 years is considered old growth. And so within the tea industry, very few people agree about everything. I'm not sure if it's like that in Japan, but there's quite a bit of room for interpretation.
There seems to be some regional.
And say no one agrees about anything, but that's
there seems to be some regional agreement, but there generally,
there are no regional agreements.
If you're
house to house, there are disagreements.
There's this there's that, but there seems to be like a general sort of pride in the region, where like somebody who's like from the central Japan will be convinced that everything happening in southern Japan is just weird, or like not necessarily weird, but there's
very much in Taiwan. Absolutely, yeah.
There's like kind of.
Go ahead, Sherri.
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, and these something like these bricks or the cakes, often they're also blends, and some people will say, well, they're looking for pure single origin, and pure single origin there's an advantage to that. Sometimes with certain ones you'll pay more, but also it's important to keep in mind that many of the classic teas from the early part of the century, like Songping, for example, it's from the 1910s, very highly collected. Is $1.3 million for a cake,
right,
per pound or less than a pound. That's a blend. All of these classic teas were blends, and this was told to me by the emperor of tea, personally.
The emperor of tea.
He controlled at the time 70%.
Does he wear clothing?
He didn't have a crown,
okay.
he could have had a crown, but he was one of those guys. He didn't care about anything but tea. He wore a Timex. He got driven around in an old VW van, but he had $7 billion worth of tea in his warehouse.
Can I put you on pause for just one moment, Eric?
Sure.
This is all fascinating stuff, but Sister Speak had something she wanted to chime in with. I don't want to get too far on the narrative with. Where were you with your question there?
Oh no, I just was gonna. I can't remember now, but No, it's okay. It was really fascinating. I just noticed that there's it's hard to there's like a fuzziness when it transitions to the next person talking. Do you guys notice that?
I'm not getting that. Maybe it might be the software or the connection or the memory. Maybe try closing a bunch of programs if you're on the computer or on the phone.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm just when it goes from person to person, it always goes first, and then that was a weird sound I just made. Okay.
No, fair enough. Okay.
I was going to say that I think that the regional kind of rivalry exists in every country, it seems. I feel like it's even within regions of Canada, they're oh, this place is better than this place, or California, Northern California is better than Southern California,
Is this for produce you're thinking, or are we talking about culture, or are we talking about just everything?
Well, so many things, specifically with different types of things that grow, oranges, Florida, California,
totally. There is
so
that.
it's
even if it's the same cultivar and tastes, well, they're going to be tasting different. It's hard to say.
Yeah, there is some truth to some of it, but there's also an interesting culture that gets behind some of these regions that make it even more intense than it really is.
For sure. No, that makes sense. Why don't we make
Why don't we
tea
jump into this?
and talk about it
Oh, yeah.
and develop that a little bit further. Eric, I
Yeah.
noticed something really interesting about this tea is that I used my friendly neighborhood pu'er dagger that I got from Daniel over at the Chinese tea shop, and normally when I'm breaking apart a cake, I'm trying to be careful, but it's so tightly packed that I can't without kind of fracturing it a little bit more than I want to, and I end up producing a lot of dust. And what I noticed about the cake that you brought me is that it really came apart really easily. Is that just a packing technique? Does that mean that this wasn't pressed with a piston? Was this pressed with stone? Like what is it that it makes it that way? And maybe you can also direct us while you're answering that. Maybe tell us what we need to do for the weights of tea and water, or however you want to make this.
I personally look for. There's some debate. Some people will tell you that what's called iron mold or pneumatic pressed cakes are better for aging. I don't agree with that myself.
Okay.
Always, there's some examples from the 1950s that were stored under certain conditions that produce better results, and fair enough, but without getting too technical. But I like to source teas that are more loosely compressed. Mm-hmm. One, because I find trying to pick a tea cake apart with a hammer and a chisel is annoying.
Yeah, I did that on an earlier episode.
I also like that aerobic and anaerobic action. I think that the looseness, having sampled so many classic antique teas, mm-hmm. looking at how they were formed and the compression on those, I look for similar things, which all of those certainly would have been done with the stone mold pressing. I can't confirm. I'd have to ask whether this was made with stone mold, mm-hmm. but certainly it wasn't in that. Like sometimes they get the pneumatic press tuned up a little bit high, and it's just a little bit much.
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out. I think literally had one that was like that. Oh, it makes sense to me. So what is our? I remember you saying something about 8 grams.
I'd say 7.5 or 8.
7.5.
Okay.
8. I have a teapot that holds about 140 grams of water, or like basically 5 ounces, a little under 5 ounces. Does that seem like a good amount of liquid? 140, 150 mils ish. I know you're a little bit different from me in not weighing the water per
9.
se. But
sure, you could use 9 if you want.
I could use 9 for the 140. Like I feel like you're going to be making your tea in little 3-ounce teapots, right? Is that what you're normally doing?
I'm using a sort of a smaller sized Gaiwan.
Okay.
So I'm going to be using between 7.5 and 8 roughly
grams of water. Of tea. How much water do you think you're putting in? How much does that is that like 2 ounces?
150.
Okay,
cc's.
so roughly the same. Okay, so Sherri Anne, 140, 150 cc's. Am I right to recommend boiling water, rinse, toss out the...
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, very fast.
Okay, very fast.
Okay.
Boiling water, rinse. Okay, so we're going to just submerge the leaves with boiling water, and then we're going to...
8 grams or 9 grams?
You get to choose, apparently.
Woohoo!
If you want it a little stronger, 9, a little weaker, 8. You can even go 7.5 for a classic option, he's saying.
I think it's good enough that you can push it a little bit and it still tastes very good.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
So 14.
I'm gonna go get my sieve.
So I'm at 14.5 grams of absorption, which is kind of interesting. And then I'm
100 degrees on this one.
Okay, I'll double check that. Make sure that I'm. Okay, so
with some lower quality pours, people will tell you to lower the temperature a bit, and it does improve the taste. But with a high quality oolong tea or high quality tie guan yin, high quality pour, 100 degrees.
Okay, all right. So I'm gonna go for what, 15-20 seconds? You're thinking? Or should I just do it by feel?
Sure.
Okay. What do you find you do for that first infusion after you've done the rinse?
I'm about in that range.
Okay. Awesome. Good to know. All right. It was interesting when I was having tea with the different guests on the tea festival. Basically, everybody was making their tea this way.
Yeah.
It was really kind of cute. I'm like the only one who does the weighed water and weighed, everything, and then temperatures and all that fun stuff. But I'm glad that you humor me, Eric, and you provide me with these details rather than just some people are just like, just make it however you want to make it, and it's like, I appreciate that, but I want your opinion.
I can do it both ways,
I know
but
you
I
can.
choose to do it, by the force.
Yeah.
Use the force kind of.
Meditate with it, right? Totally.
There is something there. Like sometimes I make it with the measurement, and then later I just use like my intuition. But you kind of feel this buzz when it's like the right amount. Like.
Yeah. I believe that the tea tells me when it's done, and sort of tugs at my, sort of tugs at me and says, "Okay, pour me now," kind of thing.
But we kind of develop that over time, right? And it's based off of like a relationship that you build with the tea and experience, and it's so useful for people that are just starting to brew tea this way to have some fairly specific guidelines. But I guess it's a good reminder that they are guidelines, and that every tea is going to have, and even your own. Like that day, you might have different requirements for your body, and it's very nice to have that sort of intuitive relationship with the tea brew, because being able to adjust extraction times and doses of tea and sort of the strength or weakness of the liquor, it really helps you interact with that tea with a different expression each time that you drink it. And it's against, say, I'm a wholesaler, so a lot of times I put a lot of focus, perhaps too much focus, on consistency of the extraction. So but I think the reason I do that is I want to have, people that are just getting into making tea have sort of like a recipe that they can start with and still have like a really interesting tea. Because more often than not, it's the first cup of a tea I'm unfamiliar with that is the most unpleasant.
Oh, how long are we steeping it?
I pour it now. I have already poured mine.
Yeah, 15, 20 seconds.
Should be.
Oh, shoot.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay. Oh, I don't have a cup to pour it in. Hold on.
Nice. Step one, mise en place. All your ducks in a row.
Some people will say a minute because they like it that strong.
Yeah. Oh, this is I want to say that I'm enjoying it, and I'm trying to qualify that a little bit more than just saying yum. So anyway, first statement, yum.
Well, I would say look at the fullness in the mouthfeel. Like for me, it really expands. It jumps up and really hits the top of the back of the palate, hits the back of the throat. Extremely clean. It's got that sort of almost like a wind quality, that almost like disappearing on the palate, which is there in fine tea. It's still got some astringency and bitterness, which is what we want, because that means the active sort of chemical, the theanine, in the tea is there, and that's going to give us the effect, the ultimately the sort of the well-being, euphoric feeling from tea.
I'm really tasting or smelling a very almost like rose-like aromatic. And that floral quality is really fascinating to me, because I don't normally smell that in an old tea cake. And it actually tastes quite, like, don't take this the wrong way, it tastes actually like it's young, especially in comparison to the cake that we had yesterday, right?
Well, it is.
It is young.
It's new.
Younger. How is it a young cake?
Well, this is 7-year-old raw.
Okay. So it's under. I often tell people that 10 years is kind of the benchmark where you want to start drinking your tea cakes. But I'm sort of feeling like I should take that back. That it's very.
The trend, Jared, in China and increasingly in North America is towards fresh pour. There's it's funny that people in China will tell you now that old tea is actually less expensive than new tea. That there's a trend which goes against a lot of the traditional, like Hong Kong traditional theory of aging tea. But some people really enjoy the fresh pour tea. There's Daniel, our friend in Chinatown, talks about how a lot of sort of green tea people have gone to pour and sort of affected their feelings about tea on the pour market. And it's I'm a classicist, and it's taken me a while to change, but I also like it from a different perspective. I like this tea very much in that it's very clean, and the tea that we had yesterday was also quite a bit different. in terms of coming from a very different angle, very different price point, and
There's a little bit of interesting smoke aromatic in this that reminds me of a good whiskey. It's kind of interesting too. Do you get a certain, like, not an overwhelming in any way, just a very subtle hint of smoke
Yeah.
And normally I guess when I'm drinking older teas, especially like pu'er cakes, I'm often in the world of like leather and mushrooms and pine forest and all these kind of very smooth, but this one is a little bit like, especially because it's just the first steep, it's going to be lightweight for sure, but there's these very effervescent quality to it. It's like a very thirst quenching, very easy to drink. It's not as like I don't know, maybe it's because I used a little bit more water than you, but I don't taste like a weak tea. Like, it's a very like well flavored liquid. It's just a lighter. It's lighter than
drink more.
Yeah.
I've had 2 cups and I feel like my forehead's melting.
I've noticed that it kind of reminds me of like some type of blossom.
I'm serious.
Yeah. A blossom, like an orange blossom or something.
Yeah, something, or even like a floral blossom. Like when you're walking down the street, there's like a blossom. Like the blossoms are just coming out here right now.
Springtime.
And that's something that's a feature I find that is common to really fine, like oolong tea or Tia Guan Yin or like Iron Buddha or Cliff tea. They all have that sort of berry fructal kind of berry blossom taste, which is, you'll find it in the finest examples of pour and these different varieties of tea. And it's something, I'm glad you pointed that out. It's something that I really look for. And again, this tea functions very well right now. It's a beautiful drink right now, and would appeal to oolong drinkers and people that like.
Have you personally had it earlier?
It was phenomenally well as well.
Have you personally had it when it was even younger than this, or is this?
Well, it's changed a lot since it's been in the country.
Okay, so how long have you been interacting with this tea? Has this been a fairly recent purchase for you, or is this a tea cake that you've sort of interacted this from this producer this year, this lot? Is this something that you've had a chance to interact with for a longer term, or is this? I know Cloudwalker, you kind of restarted things and you're bringing in some interesting selections. I know you haven't. Yeah, sorry.
I know that the daughter of this particular family that has this factory, and they also have sort of like a spa tea retreat type health and wellness retreat in Yunnan associated with their holdings there. And she works in Shanghai. She doesn't have anything really to do specifically with the family business. She's a headhunter in Shanghai, which is scary. Okay. very, very sort of person that you want to have as your friend, kind of thing.
Fair,
and,
that's awesome.
And so we've been talking about working together for probably 3 years. And I was doing the Silver Crescent project, and then we were helping out with Van Shop for a little bit, which I no longer have anything to do with. And then now just seemed like the right time. We were sort of talking about it for a long time about how we could work together. They had an interest now in expanding to international markets, and they knew my background and felt that we could be a good fit. And there was just extensive negotiations.
Cool.
And of course, all these happen at 3:00 in the morning because it's across the world,
other side of the planet. Which from I understand from previous conversations, actually, that's where your clock is, right? So you're like sister speak. I often we talk about this. She's gone musician time. So Eric,
what's that mean?
Apparently that's that. It's concert. You got to perform at 10:00 at night, right? Like that's when you got to have your peak, and then you come off of that, and you're up late, and so you're all of your busy time is around then. So for my conversation with you, that seems to be maybe you're on musician time, Eric, and you didn't even know it.
I'm on tea time, which doesn't exist. Tea standard time, which I don't know what that means. It doesn't. Time no longer exists. But hit it again. You need more of this.
Let's do another steep. Let's do another steep.
Advantage of having this affect me extremely quickly, but it gets to other people after a short period of time.
Sherri Anne, Eric's gonna get us tea drunk.
I hope
All
so.
right.
So
I can only have like one sip of each because I'm so sensitive.
so Eric, am I gonna do
Yeah.
how long am I gonna do roughly for the next one? I generally do around 30,
20
40
seconds.
seconds. 20 seconds again. Okay.
If it was
Okay.
a bit too strong for you, flavor wise, just dial it back. If you want more, push it.
Did you say 20 seconds or 50 seconds?
20.
20. Okay. All right.
Because it's already open, it should release quite a bit.
Quickly. Okay. Awesome. Then that's what I will do.
I'm interested to know how, from a musician's perspective, like Sherri Anne, whether drinking tea, how it affects your voice, because I feel it affects my voice quite a bit when I present about tea. After I've had a few cups, it seems to soften things down, and my voice sound different to me. Do you find that at all?
Yeah, it just depends on the type of tea. So like, especially like an oversteeped tea will be very drying and be harder to sing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was a little distracted when you asked me the question. It was just I have to get another cup. But you were asking about how tea affects singing.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, there's so many different kinds. So surprisingly, things like mint, like not Camellia sinensis, but mint teas are actually kind of drying, even though they're nice if you have like a runny nose or something.
That is gold that you can drink. Go ahead, sorry.
I'm excited. I just yeah, I'm gonna grab another cup once it but yeah, so with tea I find like the tea that I find the most friendly for my voice overall is like a very light, very lightly steeped, and like a chai, like a crimson with other spices in it, or a rooibos, honestly. Green tea and crimson tea can be a little bit drying, but like but it's also, it's not drying like right away. It's really nice, but then partway through the show, I noticed it's a little bit drying to my throat. So like, honestly, mostly what I drink before shows is coconut water.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's like if I have anything going on where I've like been traveling or something, coconut water. And I learned a trick from an artist from their to one of the tour managers about glycerin. So like any type of herbal throat sprays with glycerin in them, not alcohol based, and it helps so much.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but the warm liquid overall like just loosens everything up. So like having a lightly steeped tea is also nice, of any kind, really.
Right. Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. Yeah.
So it all helps.
I mean, I'm not a professional singer, but I guess more and more hoping to go in that direction. But the coconut, what was it? Coconut water and like you don't like pineapple juice, but I've always found pineapple juice really helps me for some reason. It's the weirdest thing. It shouldn't work, right? Should pineapple? Hello? Did we lose her?
I think she went to get a cup.
Ah, okay, all right. That was my question. And it's all good. We're back. So I'm actually enjoying your second steep here.
And if you get a chance to smell the pitcher, I find that the flavor or the aroma changes quite a bit. But now it's reminding me more of like a kind of like an osmanthus.
Yeah, I think that's
Longjing, or like a dragon well.
I was going to point out osmanthus as the flower here. Sherri Anne was saying, walking along the street at spring and having the aromatic like flower kind of waft into your nose as you're walking down like a residential neighborhood. I think that these like an osmanthus flower or a hyacinth or something like that, those very pungent flowers. There's something really interesting about it. This second steep I made, I brought out a lot more bitters. It has a lot more of a sort of like a punch to it. I didn't listen to you. The first one I did 40 seconds. And the second one I did 40 seconds. I regret not listening to you. I should have done 20 seconds. I think I would have enjoyed it a little bit more if I've curbed that second steep's bitterness a little bit. And I'm going to listen to you the next time I have this tea. I'm gonna do it.
And it's still doing you benefit no matter what. Sorry, Sherri, but just that if you look at the viscosity of the tea and the optical quality, just how it catches the light and the pure, like it's almost like I relate it to like a gemstone, how clear it is, clear and bright.
Right.
It's a feature of the natural environment in which it was produced, and how it very pure, very, very clean. And to get really getting tea from from Bingdao or from one of these famous mountains, is great. But the most important thing is to get a really clean product. And if you're getting really pure clean tea, that's the most important thing, and it really does the most for you.
We had a tea hunter on the show, really fascinating woman on the Tea Appreciation Society's tea festival, Shauna from Wild Tea Chi, and she just did this passionate presentation that was like she was livid, absolutely livid with the way that fair trade and organic can be usurped by people with malintentions, where you have the certifiers on the ground and they're interacting with folks that are a little bit less ethical than we would like.
Sure.
And so there ends up being like maybe it was people were getting paid properly at one point, but then they're not later, and then even the people trying to make sure that that's a fact are kind of have the wool pulled over their eyes. But that makes you question reality itself. Like,
wow.
Like I really understand that, and I want to. Like, it's a really hard balance there, because sometimes people are like, oh, organic isn't organic, or fair trade isn't fair trade. Like, how do you, as a tea sourcing individual, I know JagaSilk has our methods for how we kind of try and interact with this debacle, but what do you do, Erick? How do you, I mean, it sounds like clean tea is important to you on a lot of levels. How do you ensure that that's the case?
Well, having been exposed particularly early on and throughout my career to very, very high quality teas, I basically started being exposed to some of the best quality teas, both in the vintage sense and also gold medal winning teas from the years which we were drinking, all different types of teas. I feel that once you're exposed to what a quality tea is, it's very difficult to be lied to. Right. I know what clean tea tastes like, and I sometimes even looking at a tea, I can immediately know whether, looking at the tea liquid, I'll know whether it's something I want to drink or not.
Do those
smell and taste.
Do those two, though, by their nature, go hand in hand? Because it's an interesting question. Because I mean, I come from a Japanese tea background, and when I'm having Japanese teas, I remember drinking some tea with some producers in the village of Mandokoro, and
I'm going again.
And she the matriarch of the company, she said when I made some tea for her from a producer that we work with in another area of Japan, that the tea tasted like fertilizer. And what that meant to her, I think it's now what's interesting, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's unnatural fertilizer, or that it was like that she's not necessarily tasting poison. I think what she was tasting was a rich brothiness, an umami that's often part of what makes a Japanese tea really special. But for her, that was the sign of a bad tea, and she didn't like it because she likes her tea, which is hand-picked and grown from seed rather than clonals, which is unusual in Japan. And she and when I taste her teas, it actually reminds me of more of the special Chinese selections that I get. Like, it's a very good origin, but
sure.
but if you were a judge for Japanese teas in general, her teas wouldn't place high. So when you say the word good quality or top quality, like, that to me is such a gray area.
To give you an example,
is this I guess my question is this good tea on an auction, like a judge, or is this good tea in Erick's personal preference? Where is that middle ground?
Well, I like I said, I've had the, we used to get the gold medal winning, because of who my teacher was, we'd get the gold medal winning Tia Guan Yin right off the plane for that year, the best Tia Guan Yin available on earth, and we drink it.
Right.
And so I know, and that may have been $10,000 for 100 grams at that time.
But that was in the opinion of an auction, in the opinion of who?
That was in the opinion of the top Tia Guan Yin experts in China.
Okay, that's I guess that's what I'm trying to qualify. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. No, that's interesting.
But yeah, but like just for this,
Yeah.
and I feel that my opinion should count for something,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
at this point. But for this tea, just this tea by itself. So
Yeah.
let's say semi-wild.
Yeah.
We'll call it semi-wild. Absolutely hand picked, hand processed. It's the tea from the time it's picked to the time it's processed into shapes. It must be processed within 3 hours of within a 3 hour window. It's all completely hand done, and it has to be done by people with tremendous skill in processing it. There's some debate within the tea world about, not all processors are the same. Some people do it with great care and affection, and they love it, and they put their honor into doing it. I think a lot of Japanese producers are like that as well.
Yeah.
Not everyone's like that, and you can really feel the difference that goes in at every stage. Even and also how the tea is stored, what the materials. The package that this comes in is made from many times recycled paper, for example, so that the paper does not produce any smell and will not influence the tea in any way. That acts simply as, the inner paper, and then the outer box acts essentially as a filter to any pollutants which might be in your environment. So if you put this on your shelf in your closet and you have a coat that smelled like a campfire or something, it wouldn't affect it as much, for example. But and it's all these details, which the reason why we go to some of these top producers is because they're passionate and committed to every single detail along the process, and those are the people that I'm privileged to be able to work with, and I'm basically just their glorified translator, but a little bit more than that, but pretty much.
Yeah, no, fair. Okay, so you're just, I guess that was the purpose of my question. Is I'm struggling with this question a lot, which is what is good, and what is like, how do we really qualify something as a high quality selection, and how individual is that, how interpretive is that? And I guess it's interesting to have the background for tea, and I think what I've come around to the conclusion for is that it's really interesting to have that kind of dialogue. This paper, this care, this person, this lineage, this garden's been around this long. This is how they care. This is why I like them. This is what makes them interesting. This is what makes me think that what they're producing is something that I enjoy drinking. That conversation is so fascinating to me. So why do you enjoy this tea? When you were like, hey, I want to bring this in for my rebirth of Cloudwalker teas. This is going to be in my lineup from the beginning. There must have been a cost component. You can't just choose like the most expensive, amazing tea. But you're also going to have another.
I actually expected it to be far more expensive than it turned out being.
Okay, but you can't. Conversely, you can't just get the cheapest crap.
I chose it based on quality, and then later asked the price.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so when you tasted it, what was it that made you go like, this is the tea for me? Like, what were the components for you that made that decision?
I look for teas that produce euphoria.
Euphoria. So it's like a feeling.
Pure and simple.
Interesting.
If it makes me feel fantastic, from my head to my toes,
that's what you're looking
hair
for.
stands on end, and I have a fantastic session, a big smile on my face. If it makes my body function in the way that I want to, it's a meditative aid, and that's what I'm looking for. And it's, I've said this many times, but I wouldn't sell anything that I personally wouldn't drink myself.
Right.
And I've had some arguments with past partners and people that I've worked with over that.
Right.
And sometimes businesses didn't work out because of that. But something I'm very passionate about, especially the cleanliness aspect. And fortunately, I'm able to work now with people that are equally as passionate about that, if not more. People that have, in a sense, crusaders on behalf of tea to stop farmers from Mr. Chen in Taiwan, for example. There's a video on the website that shows this, but in the past, people would cut off the limbs of trees and then pick the leaves off them in order, to make it more convenient, and burn tea fields, and they would have, this is in the early 2000s, if farmers would come even with beautiful tea leaves, they'd say, no, we're not going to buy these from you because you're damaging the environment, and we'd like you to harvest in this way that sustains the environment.
Right.
And slowly over time, they were able to change the harvesting practices. And Mr. Joe, the elder Mr. Joe, was also instrumental in helping to turn the tide of some of these practices in Yunnan. and
That's fantastic.
they're really great people, and we should. And I'm personally grateful to them. And,
So you're finding on an objective level, if we weren't talking about I'm personally invested in, and I think all human beings should, in a natural environment and in pushing back the poisons, toxins, pollutants that we are breathing in and ingesting more and more. And I think the pushback against that is absolutely critical. But you're also noting that the environment that the tea grows in, whether or not that particular plant is been treated nicely, also the ecosystem that it grows within is impacting the flavor because of a spiritual component. Like when you drink it, it's being impacted perhaps by the positivity and negativity of the ecosystem that it grows within. Do you think that contributes to your experience of the tea?
Well, it's a different modality. I certainly approach tea from perhaps a Taoist modality.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure that there are, if you were approaching it from a scientific perspective, you could find reasons which support the supporting of the microbial climate in this forest, where there are more than 100 million types of microbes just sort of floating in the air and acting upon the leaves from the bud stage, and keep preserving them through all the processing, and that's what produces the prebiotic and probiotic aspects of the tea, and then fostering that
terroir on a very physical level.
But the Taoists are more like wizards, and so they're or alchemists, and they're coming at it from a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But the goal is the same thing. If your goal is health and wellness and happiness, my goal is happiness.
That's
and
interesting.
I'm not really overly concerned how that happens.
That's an interesting point. I actually had a kung fu instructor tell me that Tai Chi and kung fu have the same endpoints, and that they start at different places, but they end in the same one. And I think that this Taoist perspective on tea enjoyment and a very scientific, sort of more empirical sort of component, what you're saying is that they kind of end up in the same place, and that makes sense to me. I actually find that's actually I work my way backwards to a formula. Personally, I find something that also makes me feel good, that I really enjoy, that on an existential level I'm really into, and then once I've identified that tea or that particular component, I try to find out the measurements that achieve that result, so that I can share what I've achieved with others, or at least give them sort of like a recipe. It's kind of like, I guess it's kind of like making a music sheet. You write the music in a place of creative sort of a creative moment, and then to try and house that in something, a clothing that you can then share with other musicians, or that you can record or what have you, is also very beneficial. But the writing process and the sharing, recording, performative process, and having it, and then again another layer to that, having another musician perform work that you yourself have written, and how to share that performance notes. I think there's a metaphorical connection there between what I guess I'm hoping to achieve with tea when I'm creating these recipes for people. You know what I'm saying? Is this?
I do.
Yeah.
But I'm also curious about things like, I wonder how Bach played Bach.
I know, right? That's so fascinating to me.
We don't really know. Not exactly. we sort of do, but not exactly.
Yeah.
Well, there's something interesting happened in terms of the thing is I think if someone's really into tea, they have a lot of experience with interacting with the plants.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Of both Camellia sinensis and herbal teas. Then there's this ability to intuit the health benefits of it. I feel like that's the case also with music in a different way, where so when I moved to Los Angeles, I noticed something quite extraordinary when I was hiring musicians. Not only could they learn the material because I had made chord charts, kind of like the scientific breakdown of the music, they also were able to capture the energy of the music and the passion extremely quickly. And I was like, wow, this has never happened at this level. The same thing with a couple musicians I heard out of Vancouver. And It's happened in a few different places, like where people are really active and they're around music a lot, and they're like, same thing in Berlin. Like it was like, wow. So I think that when someone's really into tea and having a passionate, like spiritual and emotional connection with it, then they're able to translate the like scientific guidelines to their own liking very quickly for health benefits and also like a spiritual experience.
How much of that ease of translation for you was a result of your own sort of increase in musical ability and sharing ability, and how much of it was just the professional quality level and the passion quality level of the new people you were interacting with for your music? Was it a combination of the two? I imagine they must both play a role.
Yeah, I think it's a combination. Yeah, well, for music, yes.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
Yeah, definitely a combo. Like I have to have everything prepared well for them to be able to connect with it spiritually in the way that I feel connected to it, or in not necessarily their experience, but like the way it comes out, I feel connected to it, you know? So I think with tea, I think there's like, I think about energy and that can be transferred like homeopathic medicine. And so, yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense if there's I mean, obviously there's a lot of ways to look at it. Like if there's a ecosystem that's flourishing, then energy is moving through that in a very happy way.
Right.
And you have energy moving through the birds and through the different animals and people. And like all this is like all in the air, in existence. Yeah. And then it's surrounding the tea as it's being made with this energy of love and happiness. And it's like, from a scientific method, we like can dissect all the physical components, but we're never going to be able, with our tools in this day and age, measure the spiritual component of that. But we know that there's this energy there that can be transferred into our tea and into our food. And like, you know, there's certain foods that like literally make me feel angry. Fair. Like if I have like accidentally have like factory farm dairy, I'm like mad.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
My cousin used to say, like, we'd go to eat in a restaurant or something, you'd take a bite of the sandwich or something, and say, oh, this was made with very little love.
Yeah,
you
can hear that. I actually, I had a restaurant near where I used to live in Japan, and I remember one of the owners would say, we let go of the chef because you couldn't taste the love in his cooking. I was like, wow.
And then other places you can.
Yeah.
They have lineups.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's part of that is marketing, and part of that is passion and ability to transfer that. But I'd like to hope that the latter outperforms the former. You know?
Yeah, there is a weird thing about marketing when something's not actually genuine and authentic and passionate.
Yeah.
Often it starts passionate, and then at some point it becomes marketed in a way that the person that originated it is no longer passionate about it. But they've developed this fan base, so people like there's a connection, but like it's like, what are people connecting with in it then at that point?
There's like I think, and also when there's the capitalist pull, like if you're starting to do better, but you're finding a hard time actually paying your bills, you start to go down this slippery slope of, well, if I just paid a little bit less for what people are going to pay this for, then perhaps I'll have a little bit more money to pay the bills. And then that can get addictive, because then you can go into a place where you're like, well, if I pay even a little bit less money, then I'll have more money left over from this larger, ever-growing pool of people to be able to spend on some fun things, you know. And it's really, you can start to break the trust of the people that you're sharing your craft with over time. And you do see it happen time and time again. I think it's really challenging, very challenging to scale up a passionate enterprise. You know, and also to stay in something a really long time.
Talk to Uncle Elon about that.
Uncle Elon, there you go.
World.
It's
he's a man of passion that flew in the face of all that. He's like, he made flamethrowers. I'm going to do what I want to do.
Yeah, it's interesting.
He's the rare example, but he's a shining example of what is possible. He didn't, you know.
I mean, there's a lot. He's a controversial guy, but you know, but you know, there's some pretty cool stuff he's doing, you know. But I think that he did have a little bit of a leg up, to just put it in perspective, you know. So like, be interesting to see what his worldview would be if he started off from a place of poverty, you know?
Yeah.
And
Well, he lived on $1 a day when he was making PayPal, just to see if he could do it. You know that,
right.
Yeah, there's a little difference in seeing if you can do it and having a backup plan versus actually doing it.
Well, that's what I mean, you know, but it's like, I guess it's
The
hard.
stress-
I think a lot of people have a lot more advantages and do a lot less than what he's done. I think
Agreed.
he's
Yeah, that's-
commended.
Well, I mean, less and more, it's also so interpretive. But yes, I understand what you're trying to put out there. There's some
I see this
amazing
in
creativity that's possible, and to be able to say, hey, this is my dream. I'm not letting go. I'm just going to go with the vision, have the passion follow through, and scale that up. So I guess it's an interesting a point for sure. Yeah.
I'm
I
not
think-
disagreeing with you. I'm just saying that, like.
Yeah, totally. No.
But I think if you hit it one more time,
Yeah.
I've gone a little bit ahead, but about 25, 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Then you'll get into what I call like the nutty, like the oily. I think it's like a tea oil. It's almost
Bringing
like
it back to the tea.
like a
Yes.
cashew nut. And
Okay,
then
we're
there's
doing
the mineral of the earth. And
I'm getting into
the
it.
soil of Yunnan is fantastic. There are all these rare earth minerals in there.
Peel back the
Other
tea.
things. I see it as like charging up the battery of the human body, with these rare
Doing it.
earth.
Is this nickel? Is this, what kind of battery is this? I'm just joking. Okay.
It's bigger than the iPhone battery. whatever that
Okay. All right.
It's actually a battery that no longer requires mining lithium from Bolivia.
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing. Okay, I'm into this. What is my time on this? I'm going to follow
Well-
your rules this time. And Sherri Anne had something to say. Yes. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Just on the note
No,
of
this
that,
is-
I would not say that mining entirely is. I don't know. Lithium, Bolivia. Like I'm just saying, there's so much mining happening there now that it's
Right.
interesting situation. So hopefully there's a balance that happens, and there's other types of batteries that are,
There's
created.
You can get a lot of the rare earths from just sort of dragging some silt off the seafloor, can't you? I don't know. I'm not the scientist. But,
We have to go on into
I've
another.
heard things.
What was that?
But I also don't always have the most reliable sources. I know about tea.
Well, maybe-
That's right. I should stick to my sweet stuff.
Maybe we can get Elon on the show.
Yeah, maybe one day.
I don't know if he's a scientist.
We'll grow it. We'll get him hooked on tea, and then it's possible.
Oh my goodness, so many questions. Okay.
I want to be the first tea on SpaceX. Instead of the
Right.
first tea on Mars.
I'm bringing it to Mars. Yeah. Yeah. No, this is at 1 minute. Have I gone too far? I feel
Probably
like
good.
fourth
Try.
steep.
Try it out.
Okay.
I'd rather, like, when we're testing teas, it's better to push it further
Yeah. Okay.
than less, because anybody can make, like, it's easier to make teas more fragrant and flowery and sort of nice and honey tasting.
Okay.
But it's harder to take a tea and push it hard
Right.
and still have it be palatable.
Yeah, I noticed that's hard to do with that certain, especially harder for me with crimsons and certain green teas. But I find that Wulong, and Hojicha,
Yeah.
I can push it further for my personal taste.
How do you find that now, Jared? Yeah, I hear you.
There is another component I wanted to mention. That's what it was. Sorry, Jared. How did you find it?
How did I find it? A minute was too long for me. That was.
I said 25 seconds.
I cut you off. I think.
You didn't drink more
I'm just gonna have to write you an apology letter here, Eric.
Okay, we also so this is there are two Cloudwalker bricks. One is the raw, which is this, and there's also a ripe from about 7 years. Also, ripe should be at least 2 years old. And
Don't get me wrong. This is an excellent tea. I pushed it to a minute. That's just a little bit. That's a little bit too far for me. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just. Yeah.
We're troubleshooting.
Yeah. This is what we're doing. Yes, we are.
I gotta be honest. I think my water was at around like 90 degrees, maybe, and it's like way less. But
Come on.
it's so good though.
It tastes good. Okay.
Oh
all
my
right. She's just-
gosh, it's like incredible.
I have a very basic question for you, Eric. I want you to tell our audience, as our friendly neighborhood aged tea specialist, can you explain from your working knowledge the difference between a sheng and a show, or a ripe and a raw pu'er?
I'm sorry. I gotta say one thing before you explain it. This is like ecstasy right now. This is.
You're feeling the high?
I don't know what.
the tea
I
drops?
don't know what
it's
ecstasy
sort of
is like.
Yeah,
do.
with something, a couple other things kind of added in.
Oh God, toothpaste.
It's like a mix.
Yeah. No.
It's its own thing, isn't it?
Lightly.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. No, this I'm actually, once it cooled a little bit, the high astringency note that I'd pulled out with too long of an extraction has dissipated a bit, and it's turning a lot more enjoyable. Yeah. Okay.
I like. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Understeeped, oversteeped, and they're still good, so that's good.
This is okay. we're doing it, Eric. We're doing the R&D on both sides for our audience. We have the oversteep.
These are issues which people are going to run into at home.
Yeah.
You know, when you send tea out into the world, you can't control how the end user is going to use them. So it's better to have
forgiving tea. Yes, for sure. Yeah,
like Tai Chi means the great extremes. You know.
Yeah, totally.
Going way out here and way out there. Great, sure. Okay, so
we should try and do a fist pump. Can you do this? Okay, doing it. There you go. Okay, all right, Sherri Anne, you had I had a question for you, Eric.
Oh, you had a question for Eric, and he was yes, and I interrupted
and ripe pu'er. I would love you to explain that to the audience.
Okay, so for a tea like this, you take the freshly picked the tea leaves. They're basically something called shaching, which is sort of to kill the green. You pan fry them. Then they're pressed in generally pressed in shapes, sometimes left as loose leaf, but pressed in shapes, and then left to sort of dry somewhat, and then packed into packaged in paper and then sent off to their wherever they're being warehoused.
Mm-hmm.
And then those teas will age generally very slowly. And it would take, depending on the storage conditions, traditionally Vietnam, Malaysia, Taiwan, Hong Kong would have been, high heat, high humidity locations. And it would take sort of 25 years for that tea to turn into a mature, dark, rich tea, like you were mentioning earlier, with the umami and the mushroom and the forest flora, kind of piney, all those different sort of various types of flavors.
Mm-hmm.
However, in 1972, there was an attempt based on the demands of the French market to produce a tea which could imitate or replicate that mature flavor in a short period of time. So they came up with a process, basically composting the tea, where in 6 weeks, roughly, they would create these piles of woldway, and they would sort of, and then go and rake it around periodically and keep the heat and the humidity high so that the tea would mature in I call it cooked, because I find that ripe doesn't really totally communicate exactly, and compost sounds bad.
Right.
It's and the processing methods. Some producers make them just like with raw tea. Some producers do it far better than others.
Mm-hmm.
Some are far cleaner tasting. Some are better. Some are really not worth your attention. Some are very great now, and they taste wonderful, but they don't really get the same complexity as the naturally aged variety. That's why naturally aged teas from, say, the 1980s are far more valuable than the ripe varieties from there. So
okay. So and to put that in, we didn't. You gave us all the data there, but to explain that you started with ripe. Sorry, you started with the raw, and then you went into the ripe, right? In that description just now. Okay.
Yeah, and show just means ripe or cooked or black. They're different names for it. So if they're for example, if you have a tea and say the two bricks that we're going to be dealing with are from 2015 and 2016, I believe, respectively. So if you see those two teas, and one tea looks like this, which is more of a golden color or more of an oolong tea color, traditionally, and the other one is more of a sort of a light coffee color.
Yeah.
This will be the raw tea, the greener one, and then the darker one will be a ripe tea, because it's basically impossible for a raw tea to have matured that quickly. It takes a minimum of 15 to 20 years, even under extremely aggressive storage conditions, like in a cave in Hong Kong where there's mold dripping off the ceiling and, you know, stalactites of mold and, you know, water, like that kind of storage.
Wonderful
like
imagery. Wonderful imagery. So the yeah, no,
good storage.
yeah.
They're all
There's it's a full spectrum, full spectrum. So to qualify this for just a moment, a 30-year-old raw pu'er, is it going to have similar visual and flavor characteristics to a 10-year-old ripe or cooked pu'er, or is the visual characteristics of the liquor going to be completely different regardless of the age?
Well, I would suggest not 100%, because like I say, some productions are better and they're getting better now, but the complexity is going to be different. I find that in a general sense, the one is much brighter and clearer in the raw. Generally, what we're looking for is and also the red black. We're looking for something with quite a high degree of redness to it. Ripe tea often becomes too black, and often we'll get into sort of a muddiness. Although not 100% of the time, it really starts out with the quality of the leaf that you start out with. And for a long period of time, not 100%, but for a long period of time, they would use lower quality leaves to make the ripe than they would to use the raw, because what does it matter, really?
My sort of personal interaction with raw and ripe pu'er cakes I kind of have started to equivocate in my brain a similarity, anyways, to a sort of a parched green tea-ish sort of like direction. It's kind of like in my head, it's like green pu'er for the raw, and then the ripe goes more in the realm of red tea or crimson tea, where it has a little bit more of a syrup like quality to it, and there's it's like a more like a basey flavor. And so that's kind of, to me, and that's just what I've experienced. And I'm not I haven't, pardon the pun here, steeped myself in this genre of tea like you have. I'm fascinated by it, but definitely it's a learning process for me, and that's sort of how I've started to interact with the teas. And I personally find that I really like the really old raw teas a lot. That's
so do a lot of us.
Yeah, but they're often, for me, the way they fall into my hands is through just random gifts from tea enthusiasts. It's been challenging to find them from purveyors, where they're not really challenging on a cost level to bring in. And I guess that makes sense. The older it is, the increase in value, the increase in interest, and supply and demand, right? If you have a lot of people that want that demand that supply, it's going to become more expensive. But you've been around in this industry long enough that you've experienced when these old cakes were almost garbage, right? Like, they were not treated with the reverence that they are now.
Well, that I wouldn't say that. Some people look down upon them. That I remember a time when the most expensive teas in the world were, say, $20,000 or $30,000 that are now more than $1 million. And so that's
so it's
changed significantly.
Garbage is a bit of an overstatement, then, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, and the Chinese, as mainland China in particular, as they become more wealthy, looked at things like Bordeaux fine wine and vintage Scotch, and said, well, why is an 80-year-old bottle of Scotch worth $70,000 and our 50-year-old tea is worth $1,000? This isn't quite fair. So they decided to change that.
Fair. Yeah. And if people are willing to pay for it.
Unfortunately for people like with more modest budgets, when the prices increased 10,000% over the course of 2 or 3 years, then it changed accessibility. I'm fortunate to have some long-standing relationships to where I'm still able to access prices sort of before they get to the wholesaler kind of thing.
Right. But still.
And so we're still able to deliver things where it's accessible. Good teas, maybe not 1950s Red Mark because it's $300,000, but
right.
I could get one if someone wanted one, but I can't get one myself. So
Red Mark, can you talk to me? We're kind of coming to the end of the show pretty quick here, but the brand Red Mark comes up a lot when I talk to people who get into pu'ers as sort of like a classic example of sort of like like it's like the Bordeaux equivalent, right? Or like not Bordeaux. That's not a great example, actually. It's like it's a brand.
Like Latour.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So can you just quickly explain a little bit about what that is? What's if you were going to put Red Mark into like a short paragraph, how would you explain it?
That's really, really very fine tea. There are a number of, even within the 1950s era, there are many red marks.
Okay.
What
does it mean to have a red mark?
Depending on production, depending on the year, and some are more desirable than others. They're very difficult to get your hands on. There are a lot of fakes within that of the vintage ones. A lot of people have been taken on those, and then of course later they started making red mark again in the 1980s, I believe. There was yellow mark in the 1970s and then blue mark in the 1960s. And then they started making red mark again in the 80s, and then there are all these different vintages.
What does it mean?
Modern times, but when like a traditional collector says red mark, in the past we meant 1950s red mark.
So is it denoting a year, or is it denoting a factory?
It's a decade because they.
Okay, so 1950s is a decade of pu'er production called red mark, and anything produced in those 13 official factories, as my understanding is, there's 13 that are registered with the Chinese government, but there's a lot of people that are making them.
It's sort of not exactly. It's quite complicated.
Okay, paragraph was a big ask. Okay, fair enough. So, but
that would require more time if we're ending this off. But yeah, no. One thing I will say is that the biggest obstacle in being able to drink some of these old teas, because I know, like there are old guys around that have some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And the biggest obstacle in being able to drink some of these things is knowing that they exist. Once you know they exist, then you have a chance.
Right.
You know, I was gonna say, like, there's certain things that are really hard to find because you don't know they exist.
Exactly.
And then a lot of people don't really make, like, if it's not online, it almost seems like it doesn't exist. That's the other thing that's weird. Like
you nailed it.
Case in point, trying to find organic adult cotton underwear. I just have to say that's my
There you go. Yeah, I can imagine that's problematic. Red mark, cotton underwear, organic. Yeah, that's it's an interesting challenge. I think so. You want to like have some final words for our audience, maybe about this tea? I understand Cloudwalker. I actually want to tell the audience that that Eric and through Cloudwalker and JagaSilk we're discussing. Can I talk about this? Is this okay?
Sure, absolutely.
We're at that point where we're in the works of putting together some infrastructure for being able to reserve tea making sessions through plexiglass. So you can book kind of like you would a health professional, similar kind of concept where you would have a very COVID careful interaction. We have a tea making table that has a plexiglass screen between it, and you sit on one side and the tea maker prepares it on the other, and you come with your core bubble, and we're able to prepare you some teas, and you're able to book this online. So that's going to be coming soon. I'm hoping to do this sooner rather than later. So pay attention to both the @CloudwalkerTea social media feed and the @JagaSilk social media feed on Instagram, etc. Our top page of our webpage. Eric, do you have a webpage going yet? Are you almost there, or where are we at with that?
It's basically done. I'm just messing around with a bit of the functionality aspects, and we were delayed by some of the shipping issues related to the COVID.
Yes, fair. Yeah, that's been.
And so we're still awaiting some products to arrive, but the website's basically ready to go, and quite pleased with
what is going to be the URL when it goes live? Can we say
Cloudwalkertea.com.
Nice.
Cool.
Okay. Amazing. So that's where you can go. JagaSilk.com on our top page. I'm sure we'll be having announcements about this particular process when it does become live. Sherri Anne, if you want to check out her work, Sister Speak is follow her on Patreon. That's a great way to do it. And then she does these wonderful Thursday shows. And Sister Speak and Jaga Silk Music, Sister Speak's label Resonation, and Sister Speak and Jaga Silk Music go in concert. Again, I'm being very punny today. To bring you live music outdoors. We're going to try and shoot for March of this year to bring that back. It's going to be background music when the COVID requirements make it that way, and when we can turn it into a show, we may do that. But you'll be able to have tea on Fridays and have some live performances, socially distanced, COVID careful, March. So,
Woohoo.
yeah. Sorry. Do you want to say some final words there, Eric, to our audience and to Sister Speak?
I like Sherri Anne's opinion about the tea the best. So
Yeah.
I'd like to have her final thoughts.
Yeah.
Did you get the water back up to 100? Please,
You know,
No.
the one when I steeped it at 90 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That opinion.
Well, whatever.
I
Just a
like
general sort of broad strokes, you know.
Well, I actually prefer no one's opinion.
Okay.
I admire both of your opinions,
Yeah, okay.
and I've learned a lot on this show, and I think you're both fantastic in your connection with tea in the way that you do your connection with tea.
I also hesitate to say too much about it. Like,
Yeah. Well,
you know, I like people to discover the teas for themselves, and like I love hearing feedback. There was a fellow that just sent some tea down to in the States, and he seemed skeptical about some of the things I was saying about, you know, tea can do this, and then he said. Then I woke up one morning and he got about 12 messages in a row on Messenger. The last 4 were in caps, and like, "You've ruined me forever. I have to throw out all my tea."
Yeah.
Those are the comments.
That's lovely, man. You know, you know what? This selection. One thing that I always am searching for in these like layered teas, these teas that bring out a really interesting experience with each layer that you sort of unpeel, is that opportunity exists. I think it's really sad when you get a very two-dimensional tea and you get about 3 steeps in and it's got nothing left to say. What's really fascinating about this tea is just how many angles it's coming at. And, you know, I did get an unpleasantly bitter experience in the previous brew, but that was my fault for brewing a really long time. I was a little
did too, the first one,
I was
by
a
the
little
way.
bit more careful this time, and I'm really enjoying it. It's got a little bit of that smoke. It's got a little bit of those bitters, but they're nicely balanced with some interesting sweetness. A really nice mouthfeel, and I'm digging this like aromatic floral quality to it that I'm not always getting in the pu'ers that I've so far been able to enjoy. So yeah, I appreciate this tea, man. I think it's a really lovely tea.
Well, for a first time making a tea, you have to expect a little bit of a learning.
Well, exactly.
Process.
Like I was saying, the first time making a tea is often the worst one, right? So I really appreciate being able to make it with you as well, because you know this tea a little bit better than I do, and you've gone through a little bit of the trial and tribulation of trying to make it fit what you need, right? So I think that's great. It's nice, even if it's just the genre. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say one last. I don't want to keep us, but like I can't help but relate taste with music and tea. Just something really powerful. I'll make it very quick.
Mm-hmm.
I was at a open mic and there were all these different people playing drums, and I went up to one guy and I said, "I absolutely love your drumming." He's like, "Oh, we must have similar taste in music."
That's interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
So like when it comes to tea, everybody's gonna have something that connects with them, depending on what their body needs and depending on what their life needs at that moment for happiness.
And one last thing I'd like to add for Sherri Anne, because you've mentioned this a couple of times, is that the classical language of tea in Chinese, like from thousands of years ago, is the language of music and poetry. Like we talk about the rhythm of the tea, or the vibration of the tea. It's all the language that's used in music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there feels like a very identifiable shared frequency for tea and music, for certain. I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
It goes together beautifully.
Okay, great way to end today's show. I really appreciate you guys coming on. It's always so insightful. I feel like whenever these conversations with you, Eric, and with you, Sherri Anne, they could go on for hours and hours, and it'd be so fascinating and interesting. And I appreciate you guys making the time to come on. I'm sure we'll have tea again in the not so distant future. Thank you, Eric, Cloudwalker Tea. Thank you, Sherri Anne, Sister Speak.
Thank you.
Appreciation of you both, and we'll see you, I'm sure, again soon. Okay?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. Take care, guys.
Peace and love. Thank you.
Peace and love. Bye. All right. So that was Erick Smythe with Cloudwalker Tea, and we had Sherri Anne from Sister Speak. She'll be joining us again next week at it's going to start a little early next week. We're going to be starting at 12:30. Oh, that's a lie. That's the week after. So next week is actually at 1. We're going to have Nick join us from Matchstick Coffee, one of our clients in Vancouver. We're going to be drinking the Okumidori series. So we're going to be having 3 different selections of the same cultivar from the same farmer, but compare how the micro lot variation makes a big difference to the end flavor. So if you want to join along, go on to our website, jagasilk.com, and we're going to be doing the Okumidori Fukada, the Okumidori Shimoyama, and the Okumidori Okuda, all by Mr. Fujioka, one of our long-standing tea farm relationships. And we'll be talking about matcha and those characteristics. So yeah, join us next week, 1 p.m. And we'll make that conversation happen. So looking forward to it. You have a wonderful week, and thank you for watching. Click the subscribe button if you haven't already. YouTube.com will have all of our archived episodes if you're watching from Twitch or from Facebook. And looking forward to seeing you next week.